Hey there, good people, and welcome to another episode of The Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell, business coach, founder of Adaria Coaching Consulting, and creator of the Leverage Advice Firm program. And in this episode of The Finnovator, I'm actually going pretty close to home. My guest is Rachel Bell, who, as well as being a business coach for Affinia in New South Wales, she's also had a wide range of roles in the industry. She's been an advisor. She's worked as an insurance PDM or BDM. She has worked in funds management. She's worked in large organizations rolling out software and transitioning advisor businesses across. She's seen the industry from more angles than most people get to see. And on top of that, she's also my partner in crime, as well as the co-parent to our two little rugrats. But this wasn't just about sitting down and having a chat with someone, I like to talk to at the best of times. The reason for having this conversation was simply because I wanted to talk about the evolving role of the licensee in our industry. For those who are outside of Australia and don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about licensees, in Australia, if you want to provide advice as a financial advisor, you need to be licensed by a regulatory body, which is ASIC. And there's two ways you can do this. You can either go out and get your own license, which works really well for some people. But alternatively, if you don't want to go through that process, you can sort of work underneath the license of someone else, and they kind of manage a lot of compliance risk and a whole bunch of other things. And the role of the licensees has evolved so extraordinarily, massively over these past sort of 20 years. And it's still got a long way to go. And in particular, I wanted to sit down with Rachel and talk about this evolution, where the licensee role has changed and where it hasn't changed. And I wanted to dive into what are those practices that are able to make licensing relationships with a third-party licensee work? How do you know when licensing is the better option for you rather than going and getting your own self-license? As well as all those bits and pieces that often you don't know that goes on in the background. And I think if you are a practice that's either thinking about the best way to leverage a licensee relationship, whether or not you should go via one route or the other, or alternatively, you're someone who hasn't had a great relationship with your licensee and you want to kind of find out whether or not you can improve it, whether it's you or them, and what the secret is to really making it work for you. This is a conversation which was really, really useful. So without any further delay, I'm going to jump in and let me introduce you to Rachel Bell. But let me give you the background to it, and let me give you a bit of a sense as to why I really wanted to run a masterclass covering this topic and why I chose the person I'm going to speak to today to run it with. So first, for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, let's talk about what a licensee is, because in Australia, under the rules and regulations of the Corporations Act, in order to provide financial advice, you need to be licensed. Now, in order to do that, there's two options. You can either go out and apply for your own Australian financial services license and become what they call self-licensed, or alternatively, you can come under the license of an existing licensee. In other words, you become an authorized representative. In other words, if you want to give advice in Australia, you need to be either part of a licensee or you need to have your own license. It's kind of a really important part of the fabric. But I think whenever I think about licensing, I always know that there are always extremes of businesses. There's businesses who have gone and worked with licensees and it works for them. And then I've had businesses on the program where to say they went to war with the licensee is probably underestimating it. And I've always looked at it and gone, what is it about the fact that certain businesses are able to work with their licensee better and others just don't manage to get traction? And often the case, it's in what the businesses do and how they approach it, which is why I really wanted to have this kind of conversation and dive into what is it that licensees do that maybe people aren't aware of, and what's the best way to work with them over time. Martin, welcome. But in addition, the role of the licensee has changed so enormously. I mean, in the last 5 years, it's changed hugely. But in the 20 years I've been in the industry, I mean, it has really transformed. So I wanted to have a conversation with somebody who could give real insight into that transformation, as well as maybe a bit of a talk about where it's going to go. And as I started to think about who's the best person to have this conversation with, I thought I needed someone who not just has seen the industry from the licensee perspective, but has seen it from multiple different perspectives. And when I sort of dived into it and I thought about the kind of person I wanted to talk to, I realized that the person I needed to talk to was someone I knew very, very well, which is Rachel. Rachel has had roles in the industry from so many different angles. She's been in investment banking. She's been in funds management. She's worked in for product providers. She's worked product provider servicing licensees. She's worked on software rollouts across 3 or 4 different licensees at once. She's worked in turnkey teams. She's been an advisor. She's worked in the insurance space, and now she works for Affinia, who I think are one of the more progressive licensees out there. So in the sense of getting an understanding of how you could work better with a licensee, and maybe for those of you who come along because you'd like to get more out of your licensee relationship, you'd like to understand a little bit more about what goes under the bonnet, I think Rachel was by far the best person to talk to. You know, I think one thing I've taken from talking to Rachel in advance of this is I actually think the teams you work with in the licensee and you want the same thing. You want to be able to go out there and work with clients efficiently and effectively and grow sustainable and really good businesses. The challenge is in getting on the same page is the best way to do that. And I think when you're aligned and you can be working together, ultimately, if you're both aiming at the same thing, you get the same outcome. But I get the sense that, you know, sometimes that's a bit challenging. Without any further delay, let's bring Rachel up. How are you? Are you there, Rach?
Yes, I'm here.
How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
How are you this morning?
Yeah, super.
Thanks. Excellent. Hey, let's just jump into it. Can we do a bit of rapport? But
I'd like to say thank you for the intro. You pumped my tires up quite a lot. So
well, it's all true though. It's absolutely all of it true. You know what? I usually start these things with a bit of what do you have for breakfast, or what are you wearing, or where are you? But all of those questions are kind of, I'm just going to assume that we know that, and so let's just jump into it. Look. For those who don't know you or don't know a little bit about what you do, can you give us the kind of high-level background about your role, yourself, and sort of the kind of businesses you work with?
Sure. My role, I'm what's called an Affinia business coach, or ABC for short. So it's nice and easy to remember. I'm a PDM at Affinia, and I look after New South Wales. Been here over 3.5 years, and my practices are mainly I work with one-man bands through to larger corporates. I look after 2 larger corporates. But when I say one-man bands, these guys are pretty mature as far as business is concerned. That's the type of business we suit more, where we're not a licensee for startups. So, I'm lucky I get to work with these types of businesses. Very, very, very varied.
And it's typically, you work mainly in New South Wales?
I look after New South Wales, and I'm also now looking after Queensland.
Oh, nice. Okay. Get to go up there every now and again. That works pretty well. So I spoke at the beginning. You've done a pretty wide range of roles, which is quite amazing for a 28-year-old. So to what do you attribute that? I mean, you kind of seen it from every single angle, and that's pretty unusual. How did that come about?
Well, it started off with a science degree, and I was getting a little fed up with it. I was 3 years into a 4-year science degree and just didn't see how I was sick of having no money. And I was like, I'm going to go work in financial services, because in finance, that's where you make loads of money. Since realized that's actually not true. There's a lot of money in financial services, but us in financial services don't earn. I think it's tech these days.
No, it's anyway, property development and business coaching. That's where the money is.
So, but I wouldn't change anything. Like I wouldn't do it again, because it evolved into something which I love and I've got a huge passion for. So as I started, my journey was with Chase Manhattan Bank in global custody, and I got a temp role as an EA to one of the head guy who headed it up at that time, and then fell into an admin role there and progressed through to investment banking, to wealth management, then at JP Morgan, and then wealth management outside of that. And then when I hit MLC, that's when I really started to learn about the industry, and I knew that at this point I wanted to be working with financial advisors.
Yep.
Eventually became a financial advisor myself, but through various different roles, but and then into self-employed land, where I worked with this business coaching firm. I don't know if anyone's heard of it.
Learn a lot.
Through now working at Affinia. So it's been a really, really amazing transition through all of these, and I've got a pretty good knowledge across a few different licensees working at them, as well as the rest of the industry. So you kind of put bits and pieces of the puzzle together, and it enables you to have a bit of a view of where you think it may head as well. And
you were also involved, I know for a fact, obviously, but you were on the Advisor Central rollout. So you're out there all over the country rolling out software. And
that was amazing. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about how a business ticks from beginning to sort of that beginning to end process as well with seeing a client all the way through, because you had to get around their whole back office experience, and then what that front end client experience was as well. So they were good times.
It's interesting because you sometimes get people who have their experiences come and working in institutions. They understand that bit of it. And then you get people whose primary experience has been working, at the coalface or with practices or in practices. And it's not that often you get somebody who's kind of split their time pretty 50-50, which is where I think you get a bit of an empathy for both sides of the sword, which is why I wanted to have this conversation.
Well, working in the small business, then all of a sudden you get an appreciation for how many different hats a business owner is wearing at any one time. And if anyone who runs their own business, I've got an absolute lot of time for you, because it's this.
That's good to hear. Bodes well for the future. We were talking earlier about how much the industry's evolved. And I know we were both at MLC around about the same time. And the proposition that MLC had back in the day is literally, up to that point, people would go in and ask for 10% of an advisor book or 20%. And MLC would go in and go, give us 100%. We'll bring it onto the platform. We'll put this business system in place. And then you can go and play golf 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see how the role of the licensee has evolved?
I think with my experience, that was around for a while, and it actually probably kind of is to a certain extent now with some of the larger institutions. But I mean, I was in a team at MLC which was responsible. It was sat under sales, but we worked with the PDMs, and it was responsible for turning a business's book, an advisor's book, all across to the platforms and their life insurance as well. So we wanted everything.
Yeah.
And then when I worked in another licensee, we'd have Monday morning, and this wasn't that long ago, we have Monday morning meetings where we'd pull data from the advice software to make sure that the advisors within this massive licensee were writing the product which was aligned. So, and that, that's all in recent history, but right where we are now is I can't even imagine that being part of what we speak about. Where it just does not even come into conversation. The product discussion is not there.
I remember working for doing some work for a major a company, a large institution that bought another company, and they were shocked to find that the licensees or the advisors were less likely to write the product of the company who owned them, because they didn't want to be perceived there was any conflict whatsoever. They were actually overextending.
Yeah, look, and I just probably mention in here, a lot of the stuff I'm saying is my personal experience and my opinions. Like, they don't form opinions or experiences from the company I work for, which is Affinia, who's owned by TAL, and Deutsche Life as our big parent. So yeah, it's me here as me. That's all I wanted to say. Yep,
I was supposed to say that. I was supposed to say that in the intro. I completely forgot to mention that. But yeah,
you were.
Any views expressed are Rachel's, not Affinia's or TAL's.
Yes. So can we go back to that question?
Yeah. So there's been a real evolution with it's just completely flicked. I mean, I remember when we were at MLC, there was this whole push to run the licensees as a business, and they had a crack at it for 3 years, and they never quite managed to get to a point where they're profitable, because they were so intertwined with the product side of things.
Yeah. I mean, these days the licensees are not run. Well, the ones not run to make. We're not a public company.
Yep.
We pass the cost of delivering what we deliver onto the advisor, and we keep it as low as we possibly can. So the times where we have to put up fees are when we have things like PI go up, or when obviously it's not a part of the fee, but it's what we pass on, which is the ASIC levy, which is due to be going up as well. So this is why we try and keep the fees to fee jumps to as low as we possibly can, because the industry just throws price hikes at us regardless.
So let's talk about licensee services, and let's get into the nuts and bolts of it, because there must be certain things that you've noticed that are becoming increasingly needed or requested by advisors. There's probably some other things that potentially are not needed or less in demand, and certain other things that have just changed.
Yeah.
What do you look at in terms of that evolution?
I think at the moment, like, the hot topics that are really coming up with the practices I work closer with are, I mean, I don't think it's ever gone away, but it's a bit more of a focus at the moment. It's getting really efficient with very specific parts of their process. So I've got a practice that he's struggling with his review process, and that's what he wants to pull out, get better at. but the real focus over the past few years has really been embedding any of all the leg and reg changes that have come through, and we've been working really closely with our advisors to make sure that those are embedded into their processes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ongoing. We still obviously have to work closely with our monitoring and supervision area, our professional standards compliance area, to make sure our advisors are doing all of that. And that's where our team will come in and, make sure that they're not only efficient, but, we've got to have an understanding of the reg stuff, which, they need to have in their processes as well.
So one of the things that often comes up in conversations is when you've got legislation that comes out, and it tends to be quite principles-based. That's the whole thing we're talking about, principles-based legislation, or and then it's the job of the licensee to kind of interpret that into, what you actually do. And you were mentioning that a lot of advisors, they're having these conversations with them and saying, like, I don't want to know all of the what ifs. I want you to tell me, how should I do it?
Yeah, look, as the feedback we got mainly during the rollout of all that Royal Commission changes was, and look, the advisors were in overload, and I get it, like all of the study and all of that was coming down the pike, as well as we're going, okay, you need to do all of this stuff, you need to change all of this. And we had limited time to get them to implement as well. But what we got feedback from our group was like, can you guys just tell us how to do it? Like, it's great knowing all this information. Yeah. But they're on overload. So they've gone, just tell us how to do what we need to do in our businesses, and that's it. And that was a bit of an eye-opener. So, and I feel that we've gone down that path, and we've almost gone even further now. We're simplifying things. So we embedded reg and leg changes, and obviously all licensees have got to put their risk. There's a portion on top of that as well, which is a licensee, interpretation. Yeah, it takes into account risk and a whole lot of other different things. So we had to put on a bit extra, which we are now going back, and it's a whole project across the whole licensee where we're simplifying everything. We're rolling back all the documents. Like, how can we strip things back? How can we make this as close to what is required as possible? Now we've embedded everything, and we've learned. Let's make it simple for our practices, and that's going on. It's an ongoing project which is going to last about a year. Is this something you see as being an industry trend? Because I'm getting a sense that over the last 6 months, everybody's gone, oh, let's just strip it back. Or is this something, talk to me about that. I think so. And people also, they are, and I think as well, what's been a bit of an industry or a trend across the industry and my advisors as well, is everyone seems to be wanting to, and I feel this is not simplifying things. For some practices, that they're getting very focused on tech. That's for me something I've noticed a lot. And instead of, I think some of my advisors have implemented some great tech and had it working within their teams, and it's streamlining and it's working. And I think sometimes others are implementing things which aren't simplifying anything for them. That's a bit of a focus as well for us. Let's talk about that, because what's Affinia's approach to technology? Do you have a body of tech that's our tech, or do you have a kind of a bit of more of an open architecture, or do you kind of have this is the core tech and you allow bits to be plugged into on the sides? We've had a bit of an evolution internally with this. So when I joined, it was pretty much okay. Anyone can join with anything. Now, while that is still the case, we support Xplan as far as we have a group who uploads all of looks after our wizards, who looks after all of our documents and does all of that stuff. So Xplan is probably where the majority of our advisors will be. Okay. Yeah. However, we do have some others who will be using other tools such as Advisor Logic and Midwinter and Plutosoft. There's a couple out there. But having said that, we've also got advisors that have gone, okay, how can we utilize Xplan more effectively? It's not doing some of the things I want it to do. So they'll use certain tools like Astute Wheel and Advice Revolution and My Prosperity. And there's a range of other tools out there. And we've got some good relationships with those tech providers. And we've actually had them present into our group on a tech week that we've run. Nice. Yeah, it was really good, really well received. How do you know when a practice is
the overcomplicating it? What are because you see a lot of practices. How do you hone in and go, yep, these guys are overcooking the cake?
I guess when you've spoken to them about their goals and what they're wanting to achieve, and when all of a sudden they start diverting off and making kind of veering away from anything that would help them get to that goal, then I think that's overcooking it for the year. Also, when you're seeing advisors flick in and out of major software, I think that is so disruptive, and I honestly don't understand how a practice can run efficiently when you haven't got your processes and you've been really strategic about the approach.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I've got practices which have been really strategic about big software changes, and it's been working really well.
As in planning it out and taking the time. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, planning out their process, working on their process first.
Yeah, as opposed to coming out.
Yeah, planning out the implementation and who in their business is going to be responsible for different parts of the rollout.
Gotcha. Okay. What I'm going to want to get into in just a minute is I want to talk about, Tyson touched upon it as well as Trent, is like there's certain practices that just don't work well with licensees and vice versa, which is, as I said at the beginning, it's weird because if you get down to the core objective of both parties, it's to efficiently run businesses and service clients really, really well, but sometimes it gets a disconnect. But I wanted to talk about, there's obviously a wide range of services that you guys provide. Do all of your practices use you and the business in the same way, or do people pick and choose different elements of it?
They can't really pick and choose our professional standards or our compliance area.
Right.
So that's a given. The way that those guys interact with our planners, they have a year. We've got a pretty good framework now we've worked on. And so it's like a coaching relationship where there's files that get reviewed, but if everything's good, they won't get reviewed now again for a year.
Right.
But we have other checks and balances along the way, and they've got access to our team to make sure that they are being compliant. But I think where the area advisors and practices pick and choose is sort of my team as far as the business planning and stuff is concerned. And it's hard to pick really, because you have some planners and practices which have engaged an external business coach, but also engage you to help them with certain parts of their practice. But then you've got others, which I think some planners just don't really go, they don't look for help at all.
Right.
And, they're not looking for help from me or my team, but they're also not looking externally. So I think those type of practices may just be like, it's obviously not personal because they see that they don't need the help.
Even though it's available to them. Yeah. They still don't take it.
No, but I mean, that's fine. I mean, but my role is varied. Like I can just be a conduit between the licensee and the practice to make sure that everything's communicating smoothly and everyone knows what's going on. Or we can get in and actually pull processes apart, help with tech rollouts, do some business planning, keep everyone on track for the year and really talk about that stuff. So it's fairly varied.
What percentage of your panel or across the panel would you say really engage with that sort of stuff versus just don't?
Varying degree. Look, it's probably about 50% of my group will want the heavy, full business planning. And I think after that, you've got, not saying they're not engaged because they are exceptionally engaged, but they'll be very self-directed and they'll do a lot of that themselves. But they share a lot of that back in. So we can make sure we're working together, and we work on different things. One of my practices were at our conference in Hamilton Island in May, came up to me and gave me the biggest hug. And said, yeah, I know. And I mean, I love a hug. I'm a hugger.
You are a hugger, yeah. That's true.
They said, thank you so much. You are and they've been around a while. And one of my bigger practices said, thank you so much for being the most amazing PDM we've ever had. And I was just like, thank you. But, and I probably should ask them what I do, but I don't do planning with them. They do all that themselves, but they think I'm amazing. So I'm gonna go with that.
Let's talk about the kind of challenges and the gripes thing. So one of the things I really wanted to dive into is like Tyson mentioned, he's finding his licensee a bit of an anchor as opposed to an enabler of helping clients. What are some of the biggest challenges you see when you're looking out at a practice who feel like there's an anchor going on and you kind of see it differently? What from your perspective is going on there a lot of the time? And it won't be the same for everyone, but you must say there's some common issues there.
Oh, look, we had a lot of this when we were starting to introduce a lot of the changes. I think it's really hard to explain why this needs to happen, and it's why is because it's the law, and we're trying to like we say it's a saying within our group, everyone's on the hook for the other. So Marcus O'Sullivan will stand up and say, if one of our practices doesn't comply by this, all of our livelihoods are at stake, and that's across staff and across all the other practices. That's kind of that. But I mean, there's a lot of, I've actually been privy to some conversations recently where I've spoken to some practices about joining our group, and they were sharing with me some of the extra steps that they're asked and meant to jump through, and it's really delaying. It really delays and puts barriers up for them actually just delivering and getting things out in a timely manner. At the end of the day, you've got a client sitting here waiting, and it just stuffs up client experience. So that's one thing we've got to be so mindful of.
It's funny because you've got a situation where as a licensee, you want to help businesses to be efficient and find better ways of doing things. But on the flip side, you've also going to, as you said, you get the situation where if one practice goes rogue or whatever, suddenly, potentially it's going to disrupt everyone. I mean, Dover is probably a really good example, because when we were working together, we had a practice that was in Dover. We had another one who's an ex-client who was in Dover. And I remember when they announced they were closing the dealer group on the Thursday, and they literally just before Easter long weekend, and next thing you know, boom, everybody's looking for something. And the problem was it was full on, because someone like Elizabeth, who was she is a great advisor, ethical. We had Nathan, who came out of a UBS. These guys, they were seriously good advisors, and a lot of the groups out there would, as soon as they were getting a knock on the door of Dover, no. It was like a cruise ship in the pandemic. Nobody wanted to dock it, and it kind of brought home to me that when you are part of a licensee, it's kind of trying to get that narrow channel between the two areas. That's what's really key.
It's huge. It's such a juggling act, and licensees actually, what you may not realize in the background, on a almost weekly basis, our ASIC could be in contact, wanting to follow up on stuff. It's nothing that people should be worried or scared about, but this is the nature of our regulator. I mean, they're out there, they're doing this to self-licensed firms as well, but the beauty of a licensee is we look at that, and we're lucky because we've got a great legal team. We've got great infrastructure that sits in behind and sort of we have access to. So we run with it, and we just go with it, and we sort it out. And I don't think, and we don't want practices feeling that, because people would just panic. It's
100%.
And I think being self-licensed, if that's the way you want to go, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, it's going to be amazing for some practices, but they're the things you're going to have to be aware of, and that you're going to deal with at your licensee level, and you're going to have to not freak out about it and just work with the regulator.
I was going to ask two questions, because I know from speaking to a number of different people, when ASIC asks for information, they tend to ask for a lot of information in a very short time frame, and then they're gone for a long period of time, and then they come back and they ask for a whole bunch of information in a really short time frame. So it can be really stressful, which is, we were talking about record keeping, and it's much, when there's no record keeping, it's as good as no records. But on the flip side, do you think that what's happened over the last few years has left advice businesses maybe overly spooked?
Yeah, 100%. They really are. Like, I get it. And even now when we come to file audit time, and Tyson, professional standards are our...
I'll pull those out in a second, because they're good questions. Yeah. All
right. Sorry. So even when it comes to file review time, advisors are freaking out, and we're, it's everyone's on edge. It's just because they want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
No one wants to be doing the wrong thing. Everyone wants to be doing the right thing. And this is what we're working alongside advisors to do. But look, there's so much now when you talk about certain changes that have come through recently that, make ASIC, more and more sort of in the forefront of conversation.
Yeah.
It has spooked advisors, and it, but this is why we're here as a licensee. We deal 100%. With it. Yeah.
So Tyson's point, and some good ones, is the context that he feels like it can be an anchor, and maybe you can give some insight into this. Maybe you can, he says his problem is sometimes there are professional standards that are issued, which is supposedly best practice, but there's no tools to support the standard, or it's really hard to implement. What's your take on that?
Okay. I think well, that's the shame. That you haven't got the tools or the support to help with that, because I don't know how you would do it. I would probably like to hear a little bit more about that to understand.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The other one is talking about where your licensees are mandate technology which works for them internally, but isn't as good as external offerings out there.
Yeah, totally. Look, we don't mandate tech. We prefer Xplan, and there's a bunch of reasons there. I mean, we were supporting quite a few platforms which were actually inferior, and I have 100% guarantee they're inferior to Xplan.
Yep.
And what it was just it was a lot of work on us to make sure we're supporting and making sure the wizards are working for all these different platforms out there. And we just gone, no, we need to pick one that we prefer.
Yeah,
which is Xplan, and we work closely with it. We don't have an internal system. It's managed by an external company for us, and our advisors will either join that hosted site, or they can go direct to Xplan if they want. They just don't get the level of support that they would get from that person.
Yep.
But mandating tech, it just depends on, like, some advisors love that. They want to be told, this is what your tech is, and this is how you use it, and you can't go outside of that.
I kind of feel like I remember I was at Hill Ross Darrell, you know what I'm talking about here, when they mandated Coin for the whole of the AMP network, and I was sitting there looking at it. No disrespect to Coin, but it just wasn't as good a tool, and it was proven that way. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be my feeling is the bigger the organization, the bigger the group you're with, the more likely they're going to push technology out there, which is easier for them to control rather than technology that's better for you. It's
a bit of a risk. But what we've actually said is, look, if you want to go down the path, we've written a policy around it. Like, if you want to go down the path of using this, then you just have to understand that you have to be, when we make a change, you just have to be all over that change, and that you work with your PDM or ABC on that, all over that change, and make sure you're implementing those changes in your software. So through into your advice docs and stuff.
We were talking about situations, without mentioning any specifics, where you get pushback from advisors on the regulations, but those advisors haven't actually read the regulations or haven't actually looked into it. How much of a problem is this from your perspective when you're trying to sort of coach practices? I'm
going to blow our trumpet a little bit, to be honest, because and also most of the advisors have read regulations now because of all the exams everyone's had to sit. So everyone had to get all over the code. But we actually had a really good education program that we pulled all of our advisors through, and everyone did really well. So it's just trying to get everyone all over those changes. Look, I think there are advisors out there who don't understand some out there that probably don't understand.
You can argue.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think we're really lucky here at Affinia that the way we've handled it. I actually don't come across that too much internally. But I've had conversations out in other forums where you do gather that when people are whinging and moaning about things, and you're actually like, have you read the?
Have you actually read it? Yeah. But maybe it's becoming less and less of an issue. Maybe we're moving away from it, and there's more and more advisors who are actually picking up the press releases when they're coming out, or they're maybe being better informed out there, and they're coming at it from. Sounds like, for example, Tyson, it sounds like you're quite on top of certain press standards and the tools that needed to do it. So,
that's an interesting one to hear. I mean, like what you have to understand when all these changes, and sometimes the changes would come along and they'd go, actually, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to make this change. And so the whole way your licensee is moving to implement this change and then roll it out is like, oh, okay, now we need to go back. Change it. So when the tools may have been a bit slower from, I don't know who you're licensed through, and that doesn't matter, but maybe those tools were a little bit slower to come out to support things. But
if I was an advisor or an advice business, and I was pretty confident that the way I wanted to do things was compliant and more efficient and better than the way it was currently being recommended, what would you recommend is the best way to approach having that conversation with the licensee? And conversely, what would you recommend as being the worst possible way of doing it?
Sorry, can you just say all that again?
So let's say I'm an advice business, right?
Yeah.
And I've gone, you know what? There's a better way to do our fact finding. There's a better way to do the FSG, or there's a better way to do some element, or there's a better way to put together our annual agreements, or there's a better way of doing the data gathering or whatever it might be. And I want to present this to my licensee, and I want them to look at it and go, you know what, you're right. We're going to change the framework that we operate in. There's two ways you can approach that. You can either go and pick the fight and just bang your head up against the wall and upset everybody, or you can do it in a way that gets people, you get traction, you get change. Like if you were in that advisor's shoes and you wanted to approach that, what would you recommend they do and don't do?
I would recommend you work very closely with your PDM, because your PDM is the one that understands the practice. Like, look, don't get me wrong, everyone in a licensee understands advisors, but the ones that are dealing with the advisors and would understand most about the challenges and why you would need those changes within any of the documents or anything is your PDM. So that's the sort of stuff which I work on quite closely. Look, to be honest, when we roll something out, we will ask for feedback. And we've got a pretty open policy, like as far as where we are, as far as advisors contacting really anyone. Even Marcus takes calls from most of our network. But we've got the head of research. He's at the moment taking feedback on a new SOA that we've rolled out. And it really depends on your licensee. But if there's stuff which is already BAU and you think it could work better, and if you not only want to implement that on your documents, you would think it would, and you'd have to go through that sign-off process. But what you may find is if you are suggesting that back and through, and if it's something which is really awesome, which has happened to me a few times recently, then the licensee may go, actually, that's a really good idea. Let's roll that out across.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What do advice businesses who really get the best from their licensee do that other businesses don't?
Communicate. Just be really get involved with what the licensee is putting on for you.
So when you say communicate, like are we talking a certain frequency? You should
if you're offered some help or you're offered sort of engagement point, take it. If you're offered to jump in on a peer group, jump in head first. And my better practices are the ones that do that. I was
going to ask you earlier, is there a correlation between those who do, the 50% who do engage and the success they have versus those that don't? There is?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And look, I've got most of my practices are really engaged. There's a few which for their own, probably maybe personal things that are going on, the engagement's not there. But yeah, look, definitely your licensee, if they put on a conference, they put on a PD day, they put on a peer group, they put on like a tech session, they're running like a week of, like this is all the sort of stuff that we would run. Just get involved, and don't be a passenger with the whole thing. If there's, you can put your hand up to be involved sometimes with specific things that like maybe advisor councils and things as well. Like it's a really nice thing to have. Like we've got an advisor council. And those guys actually sit across the whole country, and any big decision which gets made gets run through that group of advisors. And that's really awesome for our engagement as well.
Nice. Let's talk about where we're headed. There's a lot of change going on. And I mean, what do you see as being, to grab Corinne's question, what are the most important issues to AFSLs at the moment? What do you see as the big ticket items that you guys are grappling with? Now
we've come through the Royal Commission, there's, I think now we're at this point where we're like, well, what's going to happen with the review, which is coming out in December?
Well, the advice review,
because we were all systems go for this simplification project. We're rolling it out, and now we've had to kind of go, hang on, let's just stop, because all of this direction we're taking and make things simpler. What does this mean after December?
It feels so much like, do you remember when FOFA came out? And it was like this deadline to get things done and deadlines to reporting, and they just kept delaying the legislation. So you had all these people going, well, we've got to build this stuff. but we can't build anything until it comes out. And that's kind of, we always seem to be a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of direction and then implementation. There seems to be a really short time frame.
Yeah, I think licensees though, I mean advisor numbers are dropping everywhere.
Yep.
There's advisor movement around the place. There's more advisors that are going to roll off at the end of 2025. We've got, and I guess it's not just a licensee problem, it's an industry-wide issue. But, what's going to happen as advisor numbers continue to drop, because there's only a certain amount of advisors out there. So, where we're playing that is a bit more strategic, where we're looking at long-term growth as opposed to, we're recruiting and we're bringing new practices on board.
Yeah.
However, we've got a professional year program, which we developed over the past couple of years, and we've had quite a few advisors roll out of that.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that as a bit of a strategy now. Okay, let's not only help our practices grow and get these awesome young advisors through, but let's also look at that from a growth strategy for us.
Yeah.
Because we'll grow, our practices will grow and get stronger and get really good advisors working with them, which is so hard right now for them.
It is. I was going to say, well, I know there's at least two people on the call who resourcing's been a real issue. When you look across all of the practices, both the ones you manage and the ones that within the network, is everybody struggling with this, or are some people dealing with it a little bit better?
Some people are dealing with it a little better, but I think
this is the resourcing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Some people are dealing with it a little bit better. But look, I was speaking to one of my advisors the other day. Actually, it was probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and he needed a client service person.
Yeah.
And he said when he put this same role out a couple of years ago, he had 800 people apply because it was in the city, and he looks after his staff. He's a good firm. But he had like 9 people apply for this role, so this is what we're dealing with, and advisor numbers are even more scarce. I get advisors asking me every week, can you help me find some staff? Can you help me find advisors? Who's out there? And look, sometimes we can help because we know that there's movement around the place.
Okay.
And other times you just use your channels, you use LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a challenge. What about all roles within?
What about outsourcing? How prevalent is that in the network? How supportive are you guys of it?
Oh, look, we've got a lot of people that use outsourcing. It's just as simple as onshore paraplanning services and they can pretty much use any of the good well-known services, and to external offshore Philippines,
India.
Philippines. Yeah, we've got practices using virtual business partners. We've got them using, there's one called Hammerjack. There's a few others out there. Hammerjack, yeah.
That sounds like a cider.
Yeah. So cider sounds nice. Is it too early?
But maybe a little bit too early, but okay, so outsourcing is working for a lot of practices, but you guys are kind of see the growth are coming from professional year programs, which is why you've implemented it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's outsourcing would be more your support roles. The professional year program is pulling the next generation of advisors, and some firms are looking at their succession plans at the moment.
Yep.
And they've got people working in their practice, and they have been for some time, and they think this is the person who's going to be my succession plan, and they're working together. And then they're going to be doing a PY, a professional year program through us. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of queries through at the moment, externally as well, advisors who are wanting to join, asking about our professional year program. So it's it's a good one. Yep.
I want to ask 2 questions. First one is, if you're a practice, and this isn't just inside your network, and you're struggling to work with your licensee, you're butting heads, you're arguing, whatever it might be. What is the best advice you can offer to if somebody? I mean, obviously the answer to it is if you really is not working, go and find a new licensee. But if someone's like, I don't want to do that, I want to fix the relationship, what would you recommend? Where would you start?
I'd start by, I mean, again, I'm going to be a little biased here because this is my role, but I think that's something that your PDM's really got to work on with you.
Right.
Look, you're going to have that, and a lot of the time it could be that it's nothing to do with the licensee and nothing to do with the relationship. It's got to be something else that's going on in this advisor's life, which could be creating some friction. But I think it would be just sitting down one-on-one and actually talking through what those issues are. And if it's going to be something which we're all adults, if it's going to be something which is we're never going to see eye to eye on, or it's something which is an expectation thing, like, you're not maybe it is time to look elsewhere, but you can't do it the right way. Like, sit down and kind of have a real grown-up discussion with the person who you've got the best relationship with. Now, if your relationship's absolutely gone, there's no trust, well, that's a different one altogether. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And similarly, if sometimes it's really hard when you would see it, when you engage with a business and they want to come on board, you've obviously got a bit of a template, you know what you're looking for, but you don't never really know until you get working together what's actually the truth. And similarly, for a lot of advisors, they're looking at all these licensee relationships. They're looking at the current one, it's not working. Do I go with this guy, and this guy? What do you think are the biggest indicators of whether a licensee advice practice relationship is going to work?
Oh, from my perspective, it's looking at in past experience, the relationships which haven't worked. If I can take it from that direction, are ones which think that they don't really want to do or jump through the compliance hoops, and they find it too much. And they want to go self-license. That from there, that's kind of, and I've had one who wanted to do that. Single plan a firm who went down that path because he didn't agree with our standards, our
interpretation.
That would be a red flag if you're not up with the way that they're going to monitor and supervise you, and that they're not going to change that.
No, they're not.
And because, like we mentioned before, everyone's on the hook for everyone. So.
And I think the more diverse the network, the more people in the network, the more spread out the network, the fewer people that you got to manage it, the less likely you're going to get any bend on it.
Yeah, look, that's true. You are catering for the one who probably is going to be the least compliant. You are pulling them up and through that. But that's the beauty of where we are now, and with the quality which we've got and our supervision where we've got, and that's why we can simplify. If you haven't got that framework there, it as a licensee, it's got the complex processes are going to continually be rolled out because they are trying to cover that risk.
There used to be, it wasn't that long ago, that you used to get certain businesses that would hop from licensee to licensee to licensee. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember those days.
Does that happen anymore?
No, no, it's too much to change. But licensees used to throw money at practices. I remember a group that shall go unnamed. And I used to, when I was a BDM, I worked with I was a life insurance BDM, and there was this group of advisors that would conglomerate and move from licensee to licensee, and the licensees would just throw money at them. Those days are gone.
Yeah, I remember at a place that I worked, we had one of our big practices who got off quite a significant offer to jump, and they jumped to this other licensee, but they left all their business on the in-house platform. And it was during that year, the actual profitability of that practice to the network skyrocketed, because the business was still getting all the revenue from the investments, but they weren't having to actually manage them. So
those days are gone too.
Those days have absolutely changed. Let's talk about this self-licensing thing, because I just wanted to jump in on a point. I remember I ran a webinar actually a few years ago now, but we were talking about this self-licensing thing, and I heard it explained about 9 months ago. Self-licensing is basically you telling the regulator that you are comfortable interpreting the regulations and essentially underwriting your own compliance. And that's if you are so confident in the way you're going to do things, that you are 100%, you'll manage it, you'll do the record keeping. In other words, you are totally convinced that what you're doing is completely legal and you will monitor everything. Self-licensing may be the right option for you.
Yeah.
But on the flip...
Yeah, totally.
But on the flip side, I mean, you remember Jeff, right? Jeff, after we'd had a whole conversation, he just went, I don't have the head for that. I don't have the attention to detail. I don't want to have to think about it. And I think in that moment, he realized that that wasn't the route he needed to go. He didn't want to do self-licensing. He wanted to be able to outsource the worrying and the monitoring of that. And I think that is probably one of the best definitions I've seen of the benefit of being, if you want to go self-licensed and you're comfortable, bang. Yeah. But if you're not comfortable, you don't want the headache, then finding a licensee is a good way of offsetting that and realizing that, I'm gonna follow the pathway, if that makes sense.
The bouncing ball, and obviously it's a two-way street, and as was mentioned earlier, you can come in and have some input into some of the things that get rolled out. But it was actually interesting. One of my practices recently said to me, he's like, I'll never go self-license. And it came up in conversation. I can't remember the context. I'm like, okay. He said, I just see it as a conflict. Like, I'm an advisor and I'm a licensee. Like, that's a conflict. I was like, I never thought of it that way before.
I haven't thought of it that way.
Yeah. So in his mind, that's how it was. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting.
That is an interesting viewpoint. And then I go on to the thing about just because it could be a conflict, that doesn't mean it is a conflict.
No. That's a whole other kettle.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's leave that one alone.
Standard 3.
yeah, exactly. Corinne says the importance of communication and participation with the licensee. Actually, that's one thing. I know when you came out and you said it, it seemed like so simple. But then when I thought more about it when we were talking, if you don't have that kind of open communication, particularly with, your BDM, then the whole conduit between you and the licensee, that whole insight of what's going on, the rationale, the why, the how, the what other people, you just cut off from it. And it kind of got me thinking about that you could have a look at and diagnose the reasons why practices don't indulge that or they don't use that. It could be anything from just pure rage and anger or resentment to they don't rate it as highly a priority, or they're stuck solving the problems that they don't realize that someone else has already solved.
It's a hard one because there's a lot going, and if you've already kind of stepped out of that engagement and you're not really leaning into the licensee, because the licensee will be leaning into you probably too hard sometimes, but it's
True.
But if you're not leaning in, you might miss out on some of the awesome things like programs that are being developed, or just other stuff outside of the legs and the regs and the business policies that are being rolled out through like new business coaching frameworks and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
cool. And as Martin says, the value of a good PDM. You know what? It's true. The value of a good, like I personally, when I've done coaching, the times I've enjoyed it most is when there's a really good PDM involved, because it means that we can do the coaching, but we can also turn around to the PDM and go, well, how would you do this? Can we do this? Can we sign it off?
Totally.
And we cut it all in one place. It's always worked really, really well.
I'd love if all my practices had an outside business coach as well. That would be amazing.
I'd love it if all your practices had an outside business coach as well too. Although that would be interesting. I think we'd end up seeing way too much of each other.
No, I'm not saying it has to be you.
I'm going to go downstairs now. Let's sort of finish. I want to finish on two things. Firstly, there's been a lot of talk about self-licensing. There's been a lot of talk about simplification. There's been a lot of talk about the licensee offer being deconstructed. Where do you see it headed? 5 years time, where do you see the licensee?
Oh, I think
big question.
Yeah, it is. And look, a lot of people, I've been flipping around on this one for a bit. Like I did a podcast with AFA and they actually asked the same thing. And at the time, my opinion, I think was, look, advisors are going to be direct. Look, we're still going to be around. I'm not sure, but I honestly feel with everything that's going on and everything that's continually going on, we're here for a while.
Yeah.
Now, it's whether you think there'll be a direct sort of thing later, we're going to be here as long as we've got the legislation and the Corps Act, and we've got the code and all of the changes that seem to continue. We're here.
Well, I think for me, this individual licensing is interesting, but the fundamental thing that needs to enable it, there needs to be a body who's willing and comfortable managing it, like they do in in law. And I don't see ASIC having any appetite for doing that. And I don't see any other body in the industry anywhere near the level of resourcing or capability or to do it. So I think individual licensing is an interesting one to go down. I don't think it doesn't fundamentally change the need to get services around compliance from in place. But I just don't think our industry it's not radical enough to evolve that quickly.
No, I agree. I think we'll be around, and look, the way we work with our advisors may change. We may be more focused on, whatever, if it would be, business transformation or whatever it would be. But licensee, it's continually evolving as the industry
100%.
evolves, and it moves, and it navigates it with you. So
I've got a question from John. If there's any others, by the way, guys, pop them in if I haven't answered them. But because I noticed the time, if someone had a question off the back of this, or they wanted to see something specific or challenge you on something, or alternatively, they wanted to talk a little bit more about what you do and potentially get your advice on, moving licensees or improving, how would they connect with you?
Okay. You can contact me on my email. I've got it on my mobile. Anything. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah. I'm open to anyone asking any questions.
What's the best avenue? So I just give them the Affinia address?
Yeah. Affinia email address. Yeah.
Okay. So it's Rachel.
You can give my phone number as well. That's fine. I
don't know your phone number. I just have it in my.
You got my personal number. I can.
Website's not Rachel.Affinia. It's I've just got my wife or Rachel Works. So.
Yeah. So I'll give you
Affinia, that right? Affinia.com.au.
And if you prefer phone,
04439?
Yes, 116491.
116491. Beautiful. Okay.
0439 116491.
Love it. John's question was, what's Affinia's practice on foundation statements of advice?
Look, we've changed tack a bit on this recently. Is this in relation to when you've finished? You're joining another licensee and you're rewriting?
I don't know. I mean, I guess that question might be that when someone comes across, you have to issue I'm guessing it's issuing an SOA immediately.
Not immediately. No. Okay. Cool. No, we're very reasonable in what we require. And look, we have a team which transition in the practices and then work through all the requirements, our advice coaching area. Cool. And they work through when a foundation SOAs need to be done. But when they are done, the practices that I've worked with, we give them what happens over the course of the year as the practice reviews that client. They will review the client. They will do new SOA. They'll do the risk tolerance questionnaire and then bring that in line with our strategic asset allocation. So it's all kind of, and then bring it onto our Affinia agreement. So it's just an evolution across a year.
Beautiful. Martin, in answer to your question, I don't see why you wouldn't reach out to Rachel and have a conversation about that. And I'll brief her about what that's all about. But I think she already knows a little bit about it. Rachel?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. It's actually been really enjoyable having this conversation. I wanted to do it because I think the insight you've got is so valuable from both sides. And I think that's what's come out today.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for having me. Any
final thoughts?
From me?
Yeah. No, from the person behind you.
No, thank you for this. Look, it's made me realize, how passionate I am about licensees and what I do still. And thank you.
No worries at all.
If anyone wants to reach out, look, feel free. I'm pretty approachable.
She's a hugger. I warn you. Yeah. Cool. Everybody have a great weekend. I hope we're teeing up for quite a nice weekend of sun here. So hopefully wherever you are, you're getting the same thing. And I'll speak to you all soon. Take care. See ya.
Bye.
Well, there, good people. That's another episode of the Finnovator under our belts. And I hope you got a lot out of that one. As you may have gathered from the discussion, what we were talking about, Rachel and I, were things that we have had many, many conversations down the years about, as well as a whole bunch of other things. But I really wanted to bring this one to the fore and sort of share some of the concepts that we've discussed more widely, because I've worked with businesses where there hasn't been synergy in the licensee relationship, and I can tell you, it can be a real drag. But when you flip that round and you're able to find a way to work with that third-party licensee relationship in a way that keeps your business safe and protected in the compliance areas, but also gives you that fuel to grow in other areas, it really can make a big difference. So if you've taken anything from that, that's going to enable you to analyze what's going on right now and find better ways to improve what's working for you, this podcast will have done its job. I wanted to mention one final thing. Recently, we launched a free best practice portal, which you can find by visiting www.leveragedlab.com. The reason for launching it is because one of our themes in the program over the last 18 months in the background has been this idea of refinement. And we'd recognized that a lot of our content that we'd put on our members site, all of the tools, templates, training that we'd put together over the last 9 years, it had kind of become, well, frankly, massive. And it got to the point where, you know, when sometimes too much stuff can be just as confusing as not enough direction. So we went through and we removed a lot of content. We put a lot of it in the background. But we were left with some really strong content. And Jen and I had a conversation and she was like, well, it'd be nice to be able to share this more widely. And I agreed with her, but the one thing I always wanted to do is make sure that we were sharing the content with the right people. So the idea we came to is we were going to simplify what we do, but in order to sort of provide more usage from the content we've got, we were going to create a new portal which was going to be free to any advisor, accountant, or mortgage broker who wants to jump in and access it. Again, it's called the Leverage Lab. You can access it by going to www.leveragelab.com. You just register there and you'll get access. And in there is a number of modules from the program, including the modules we do on digital marketing. There's one on value proposition in there. There's one all about our journey to leverage, and one all about our wealth pyramid model, which if you've ever seen me speak about that, you'll know all about that. There's also a whole bunch of 5-minute summaries of a number of our top modules where we've kind of using a tool called Pictory, which is amazing. You can take an hour-long webinar and condense it down to 5 minutes of the real focus stuff, as well as our entire masterclass back catalog and all our video blogs in there. So again, if you'd like to access the free best practice portal and you're an advisor, you're an accountant or a broker, practice owner, you can just go to www.leveragelab.com, find the registration page, jump in there, and you will get instant access straight away. That's it from me. I'll see you at the next episode of The Finnovator. Take care.